Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm sorry it's a little dark, but my overhead light's very, very bright. I wanted to talk in this video, March is Autoimmune Awareness Month, and so I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about autoimmune diseases. There are about over 100 different autoimmune diseases. People know the more common ones like lupus and Sjogren's and the things that you hear about a bit more in the media. There's still not quite enough awareness about them, but people are starting to hear about them. But there are lots more that are incredibly rare. And so, but all of them are a huge impact on a person's life, and they are a hidden illness. Most of them, aside from lupus, has some rashes and things like that. Like Sjogren's is one where you have dry eyes, dry mouth, but it also affects your organs and lots of other things. And so sometimes those things are hard for physicians to discern, but there are tests out there. But you have to get to the point of getting in front of somebody who's able to take the steps to diagnose you. So I wanted to talk about my experience with autoimmune, and in particular one condition that people are not particularly familiar with. They may be if they already have lupus or another autoimmune disorder, but the general public isn't very, even in the medical community, they're not very familiar with this particular condition. It's called Antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, or APS for short. And when I went to my rheumatologist, I've always had, I've had different rashes, I've had various blood work is off, I've had a positive ANA, but a negative anti-DSNA, which is the definitive marker for lupus. So I've teetered on autoimmune for many years, but they just couldn't put their finger on what was going on. I've had hair loss, I've had dry eyes, I've had all kinds of things, but they may not even be related to anything. And so I went to a rheumatologist, and she decided to run some very unique tests, one of which was because I've had issues with my eyes, and one of them was called neuromyelitis optica, which is, from what I understand, a subsect of MS. It's in relation to MS. It affects your eyes and your spinal cord. Fortunately, I don't have that. I also don't have Sjogren's, and my most recent ANA came back negative. However, the positive test that I had was for, again, antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, in particular beta-2 glycoprotein, IgM. Mine came back positive. And the way to discern that is they do a secondary test 12 weeks apart. And again, mine came back elevated. And so there is a problem with that, though, because the diagnostic criteria states that you've had to have had some event. In the past, I did have a miscarriage, and I have had a small stroke in 2015, but they didn't see any actual clot. So she was very, she's hesitant to officially diagnose me with it. But antiphospholipid syndrome is very interesting. Basically what it is, it was discovered in 1983 by a professor named Hughes. He is still alive in London. He runs a lupus center there in London, as a matter of fact. I'm actually just checking out my notes, in case you're wondering. And it's very rare. There's fewer than 200,000 cases every year. Again, most of the time it seems to coincide with lupus, which is why he has a lupus center there as well. What it is basically, it's a protein that goes on the membrane of the cell surface, and that's what they're testing for. They're called glycoproteins. And like I said, it can be primary, which would seem to probably be what's happening with me, depending on how they want to ultimately diagnose me, or secondary, which goes along with some other disorder. I really thought for sure, because I've had dry eyes for a long time and dry mouth and all of that, I really thought for sure that the Sjogren's test was going to come back positive. but it didn't. I mean, there's still a possibility that the eye doctor may look at that even further, because I still, like I said, have continuous eye problems. But the problem with APS is that you are more prone to blood clots, which can cause you to be more prone to stroke. And so it needs to be treated. The treatment for it, and my rheumatologist has put me as a precautionary measure, even though she didn't officially diagnose me, she put me as a precautionary measure on low-dose aspirin. I am going to seek another opinion to see if I should do something further. I'm also going to actually probably do that here in the next few weeks, because I am coming up on a surgery, and they're a little bit nervous about that and how that's going to work out. But that topic is really neither here nor there for this video. But it's one of those things. Oh, I also started having levator reticularis, which is like a netting effect on my arms and on my hands, and it's typical. You know, other people have it. If you get cold, your blood vessels constrict, and you get this weird like lacy pattern on your arms and your hands. It became like really, really drastic. I tried to go swimming one night, and it just looked awful. So that's that's another sign of APS. And so basically antiphospholipid syndrome is a disorder in the immune system mistakenly attacks normal proteins in the blood. So essentially, like with any other autoimmune, you're attacking yourself. But the problem with autoimmune is that it's very, very difficult the symptoms of autoimmune, unless they become drastic, where your organs are shutting down. There is a form of APS called catastrophic APS, which means that your blood is affecting your organs, and it just shuts everything down. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But this is a very unique test to have. I suspect that there's probably a lot more people actually out there with this disorder, and they don't know it, because this isn't a common thing for people to test with. I mean, over the last 10 years that I've been sick, 10 plus years, no one's ever offered to test me for that. They've tested me for MS, they've tested me for lupus. Sjogren's hadn't been done until recently. There's a host of other things that they've tested me for. But anyway, bottom line is that autoimmune is, because the symptoms can be so transient. I've noticed that there has to be something autoimmune in my system, because I have new allergies that I've never had before, and this disorder is actually tied with what they call interleukin 6, which is kind of a topic for another video as well, but that goes along with immunity as well as allergies. And I've discovered I have a host of other allergies over the last few years. They've significantly worsened. And it seems to me with autoimmune, the symptoms can be rather transient. You know, you go into flare mode. I notice I go through periods where I lose more hair, or I suddenly have a different rash, or I have, and they're not from me coming in contact with anything. They're not from any normal circumstance that would happen. I even had, at one point, I had a problem in my jaw where I had a duct that got clogged, and it caused me to be very, very sick. Some unusual things like that, and they almost pointed to autoimmune for that. I've had issues with my eyes. I've had uveitis. So, but it's a great shame when you feel like a wreck and you go to the doctor, and you assume that the doctor's gonna know exactly what to do. Unfortunately, autoimmune is one of those things that it takes some time to diagnose. But in the meanwhile, you feel like dirt. So it's very, very hard to get through those things. I will tell you that supplements have helped me a great deal. B12, omegas, things like that have helped me a great deal in maintaining. I noticed omega helps my hair a lot. It's not in great shape, but it keeps it from being really dry. But there's a number of different things. But autoimmune is one of those things where you have to go to the doctor, and you have to be persistent and say, listen, I know you can't see this, but I feel terrible. I feel terrible. And one of the ways to show how you feel terrible is to show what you used to do versus what you can do now. I've discovered one of the best ways that I've been able to get my doctors to understand is to almost verbally shake them and say, listen, I know you don't see me every day, so you don't know this, but 6 months ago I was hiking on a mountain and now I can't do that. Or, 6 months ago I was able to pick up my kid. A kid and I were able to, play softball together. Whatever it is, it's obviously impacting your daily life. And you have to show that to them in some concrete way, because when you walk in the door, you've pulled yourself together to get there. Let's be honest. I know I have. I'll put together my hair and, do the best that I can to look like a presentable human being out in the world to go to the doctor. But sometimes that kind of shoots you in the foot because they see you, you present, you have good color in your face, you're not actively falling apart, your arm's not attached to your forehead. There's nothing bad like that happening. So you have to be able to demonstrate how these things are impacting your life. And for autoimmune, it seems to me, as a matter of fact, I was joking with my doctor about this. I said, no matter what the deciding factor is, the treatment is virtually all the same, with the exception of the APS. APS, treatments are heparin and they're, low dose aspirin and other blood thinners and things like that. But by and large, autoimmune is treated with steroids. There are some other treatments out there, but overall, it's steroids. And I told him, I said, I didn't want to, until we figure out exactly what it is, I don't want to mask anything. So I've chosen, aside from taking the low dose aspirin as a precaution, until I suspect there probably is another illness brewing somewhere. But until we figure that out, I'm not taking the steroids unless it's absolutely required. Until we know exactly what we're treating, I'm not taking anything else. Because again, I don't want to mask something. I would rather suffer with anything to know exactly what it is that I have. And that's part of the reason why I started this channel too, is whatever I go through, I want it to be valuable to somebody else. Like, if I have something really weird and rare, well, it should benefit somebody else to know that they're not alone if they have this thing. And also if they have something that's even more common, just, how to deal with these things. So anyway, March is autoimmune awareness, so feel free to chat down below. I'm going to include some links for Professor Graham Hughes, who was the gentleman who discovered the illness, again, back in 1983. As a shout out to him, he has a wonderful website with tons of information there. I'll throw some links in there. I'll also throw some links about just APS in general, as well as regular autoimmune diseases, just more reading material. Again, shoot me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.